I'm Bernard Unlug. I'm a software trainer and support specialist for Fieldcode, and it's my great honor today to show you some of the things that we've been working on. I think there have been some really nice quality of life improvements here to Fieldcode, and a little bit of new functionality as well. One of the new quality of life improvements you see in front of you, and that's our login screen. It's been adjusted, modernized a little bit, and looks a lot better. But not just this has been changed. We've also updated our website, so please do take a look at the website. Take a look around. Let us know what you think, and if you have any questions. Now I'm going to go ahead and log in just like I normally would. And that brings us to the Fieldcode Workplace. Now you may see a couple of new changes here in the Fieldcode Workplace. First thing that you'll see, starting from top here, is our component linking icon has been changed a little bit. Now component linking has always been available, and what this means is that the dispatch group chosen over here, in this case Jacksonville, Florida, will also be the dispatch group shown over on the right in the resource timeline. It shows up as green when they're linked. So if I go and I change this over here to say show Bavaria, then they both change to Bavaria, as does the map. If I change this, though, if I unlink it and I go back to Jacksonville, Florida, then only this one changes and this one remains. Or if I were to change over here, then this one would change, but this one would not update with it. When I reinitiate it, it will relink, but it will automatically use the ticket pool as the authority. So the ticket pool will decide which dispatch group is being shown from there, and both the map and the resource timeline will update. So now we're seeing everything on the map from Jacksonville instead of from Bavaria. The second thing you might have noticed, and you probably noticed this sooner than that because that's kind of small, is our parts icon has changed. We've updated the parts icon. Previously, it was a rectangle with a smaller rectangle overlapping it slightly, and that wasn't very clear to a lot of people what that meant. So we've updated it to look like a package. This now matches up with the parts icon that you'll see on the Fieldcode mobile application. So your engineers and you will be seeing the same icon, and if you try and describe the icon, they'll recognize it as being the same. Speaking of parts, sometimes engineers pick up parts and then they have the ticket reassigned away from them for whatever reason. Maybe they pick up the parts, they get on site and no one's there, and they call up and they say, "Hey, there's no one here. Can you just cancel this appointment, reschedule for another day?" And they've already got the parts. And that happens to be the case here with ticket 58. I know that because I wrote that down earlier, not because I have all my tickets memorized. But if I go ahead and double click on ticket 58, we'll see that Bernard Anderson here has that little parts icon next to his name. That lets me know this engineer has the required parts already. He's already picked up these parts, and so we must assign this ticket to him. So that's what we call parts locking, and so it's locked because the parts were picked up already. If I want to undo this, then I would have Bernard Anderson return those parts, and I would mark those parts as returned within our system. But in this case, I want Bernard Anderson to go ahead and take care of this job. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule it out there on the timeline for him. Now, maybe I've spoken with Bernard, and Bernard's called me up and said, "Hey, this job, it's scheduled for 1 hour, but this is definitely going to take a little bit longer than that. Can you give me a little bit more time on the timeline?" In that case, I can do that. As long as the ticket is not yet published, right? Or if I unpublish a ticket, then I can go to the side here and I can stretch it. Now, this was possible before, but now it does something special. Down here where it says that it's 1 hour, in a moment here, it should update to reflect the new amount of time, assuming that I chose a ticket for the correct thing. Let me click away and then click back on the ticket. Now it's still saying estimated duration of 1 hour. That should not be. Let me go and stretch it some more. There it goes. Now it's saying 2 hours. So I guess I just didn't wait long enough for it to update. But now the estimated duration is 2 hours for this ticket. So when a ticket is stretched on the timeline, that's something that's available. However, it won't do that automatically. I have to set that up on the project. So if I come down here and I select the admin panel, then under projects, and I select that project, then that's this option here, overwrite ticket estimated duration on timeline resizing. So when you resize a ticket on the timeline, it will overwrite the ticket duration if this is turned on. So this is not a default setting. Please don't confuse this though with the ticket duration configuration overriding based on our interfaces and manual ticket duration input. That means that if you have ticket durations set up through the admin panel, that those will overwrite any information coming in from an interface. So those are two separate ways that ticket durations can be overwritten. But this one here is once it's on the timeline, if you resize it, then it will overwrite that ticket duration for you. So two different ways, but this one here is the one we're highlighting today. Okay, so we've gone over locking parts, and we've gone over ticket stretching. Uh, we also now have an engineer locked icon, and actually one of my tickets does have a locked engineer. If I select that ticket, here on the ticket I can see that Joseph Platt is the locked engineer. And if I go to schedule this ticket as well, then even though Jolene Parton is a better selection, she's the one that's recommended, Joseph here has been locked. So it's marked there for me. I can go ahead and unlock this engineer and then choose Jolene and schedule that ticket instead. Okay. And now that ticket goes to Jolene. Otherwise, it would automatically go to the locked engineer. And also when scheduling tickets, perhaps my people are busy or they're missing a certain skill, or for whatever reason, I want to assign the ticket to a partner instead. Well, one thing that you may have noticed up here is you have these two options here for end user not reached and callback required. And these are intended for when you try to reach out to a customer and you don't reach them. You get a hold of someone else and they tell you to call back at a certain time. Then you'd say callback required and you'd state when you want that callback to happen. So you can state a specific day and time for calling back, or you can choose a time when you're going to call back and you state who you called or who you spoke with that lets you know when you could call back. If you go to end user not reached instead, it will, in this case, I haven't set it up, but it can have this ticket move out of the ticket pool for a specific duration and then come back in. But when you're scheduling a ticket and you're assigning it to a partner, that doesn't really apply, and it was still popping up. So now when I select recommend partner, we see that those buttons now disappear, and instead we just have the options between the partners that are available in our system. So the big change here is just that those buttons will disappear when they're not applicable. Okay, and what you don't see over here is any errors, but there is something new, and I've actually opened up a different environment where we do have some errors. So now if there are any interface or workflow errors, you'll see that up here if you have permissions for that. So typically this will mean that you have admin rights and that you have the permissions turned on to see the workflow errors. In this case, I can see that there are 3 blocked queries, and if I click on it, it will actually open up in the admin panel for me directly onto that page. And then I can select the systems, for example, this one here, and I can even narrow it down to just show the ones that are there. So now you can much more easily go and see when there are workflow errors or interface errors. You don't have to hang out on the admin panel. You'll be able to see that from the workplace. Another change that's happened recently was, and this doesn't apply in most situations, but if you have many things that you want to update at once. In this case, I've got just 2 here. If I select here, I select all, I can do bulk actions. And what was happening previously was it would do 100 bulk actions and then stop. Now what will happen is it will do 100 bulk actions and then the next 100 bulk actions and so forth until it gets through all of those bulk actions. So we had a situation where a customer had more than 100 actions that they wanted to take at a time, and they tried to do it, and it stopped after the first 100. It's still limited to 100 at any given time, just as a way of being able to handle it without error. But now it will complete the first 100 and then do the next 100 and so forth. So up to 100 actions at one time. Going back to the admin panel, but on a different page now, we're going to talk about workflows real quick. Now, workflows are something They're a little bit complicated, but they determine what happens with a ticket, the different paths that it goes down, and so forth. And we now have a new support for multiple interventions on a single ticket. So typically a ticket could only have one report given for that ticket. Now we actually support having multiple reports on the same ticket. And this could happen, for example, if you go out to a location, you go to fix something and you decide, hey, this can't be fixed, it requires a special part. What you had to do before was you had to have them report that ticket, state that they need that new part, then either that ticket could be cloned or a whole new ticket could be created, and then that new ticket will be scheduled and so forth. Now it's possible to have that ticket have multiple reports on it, so you don't need to create a whole new ticket. You can simply pull that ticket back and reschedule it and so forth. But that does require an update to the workflow, so the new workflow actions for that. And in support of that, there's a new workflow action to remove a ticket and send it back to the ticket pool. This is useful in this particular scenario, but there may be other scenarios where you say, I want a ticket to go back to the ticket pool when certain events happen, and those triggers can be set up through the workflows. And then finally, we also noticed that our destinations pop-up was a relatively, it wasn't particularly large. Let me go ahead and select the destinations. There we go. And so we've made it a little bit larger, a little bit easier to read, so that those who are creating workflows and so forth will find or have an easier time going through reading that and updating things to meet their needs. But again, we understand that workflows are a complicated section for Fieldcode, so do reach out to support@fieldcode.com if you have any particular questions regarding workflows, or if you need some assistance in creating a workflow that better meets how your team operates. And finally, there is one more change, and that is to the incoming mappings. Now, I've already set up my incoming mappings here, so it's a little bit different. I have the more complex code here instead that was set up by one of our solution engineers instead. But previously, when you would go to set up an incoming mapping, it assumed every field was required. And really, the opposite's true. Most of the time, most fields aren't required. There will be some fields that will be required, but most fields won't be required. And so we've now set the default to where all fields are marked as not required unless you go to change them. And this will make your solution engineers or anyone who's setting that up for you on your side, it'll make their lives a lot easier as they go to make changes to the work or to the or as they go to set up the incoming mappings. So as your team goes to set up the incoming mapping, it'll be easier because they don't have to go and mark everything as being not required. They can simply mark the few items that are required instead. And that is everything I believe for this latest release. Of course, if you need to see more, you can open up the side here and come to updates for January 2020 or January 29th, 2026. And you can see them here on the side panel.